channel. Today is Monday, and it is time for True Crime and Makeup Monday. As always, trigger warning, death, and a lot of it. Child killings, children doing the killing, graphic crime scene descriptions, a lot of just really graphic stuff. Sad day. So we're going to be covering today the Columbine High School Massacre. And with that being said, let's just get right into it. The Columbine High School Massacre, commonly referred to as Columbine, was a school shooting and attempted bombing that occurred on April 20th, 1999 at Columbine High School in Columbine, Colorado, the United States. The perpetrators, 12th grade students Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, murdered 12 students and one teacher. 10 of the 12 students killed were in the school library, where Harris and Klebold subsequently committed suicide. 21 additional people were injured by the gunshots, and gunfire was also exchanged with the police. Another 3 people were injured trying to escape. The Columbine Massacre was the deadliest mass shooting at a high school in U.S. history until it was surpassed by the Parkland High School shooting in February of 2018. Columbine still remains the deadliest mass shooting to occur in the U.S. state of Colorado. Harris and Klebold, who planned for at least a year and hoped to have a large number of victims, intended for the attack to primarily be a bombing and only secondarily a shooting. But when several homemade bombs they planted in the school failed to detonate, the pair launched a shooting attack. Their motives remains inconclusive. The police were slow to enter the school and were heavily criticized for not intervening during the shooting. The incident resulted in the introduction of the immediate action rapid deployment tactic, which is used in active shooter situations, and an increased emphasis on school security with zero tolerance policies. Debates and moral panic were sparked over American gun culture and gun control laws, high school cliques, subcultures, outcasts, and school bullying, as well as teenage use of pharmaceutical antidepressants, the internet, and violence in video games and movies. Many makeshift memorials were created after the massacre, including ones employing victims Rachel Scott's and John Tomlin's truck. 15 crosses for the victims and the shooters were erected on top of a hill in Clemont Park, but the crosses for Harris and Klebold were later removed following controversy. Planning for a permanent memorial began in June 1999, and the resulting Columbine Memorial opened to the public in September of 2007. The shooting has inspired dozens of copycat killings dubbed the Columbine Effect, including many deadlier shootings across the world. The word Columbine has become a byword or synonymous with school shooting. Eric David Harris was born in Wichita, Kansas, and the Harris family relocated often, as Harris's father was a U.S. Air Force transport pilot. His mother was a homemaker, and the family moved from Pittsburgh, New York to Littleton, Colorado in July of 1993 when his father retired from military service. The Harris family lived in rented accommodations for the first 3 years in the Littleton area. During this time, Harris attended Ken Carroll Middle School, where he met Klebold. In 1996, the Harris family purchased a house south of Columbine High School. Harris's older brother attended college at the University of Colorado in Boulder. Dylan Bennett Klebold was born in Lakewood, Colorado. His parents were pacifists and attended a Lutheran church with their children. Both Dylan and his older brother Byron attended confirmation classes in accordance with the Lutheran tradition. As had been the case with his older brother, Klebold was named after a renowned poet. In this case, the playwright Dylan Thomas. At the family home, the Klebolds also observed some rituals in keeping with Klebold's maternal grandfather's Jewish heritage. Klebold attended Normandy Elementary in Littleton, Colorado, for first and second grade before transferring to Governor's Ranch Elementary and became part of the CHIPS, challenging high school intellectual potential students program. So this kid was like really smart, like really smart, and this is how it ended for him, and that's sad. And there's a part of me that wonders if like this would have happened if these two people had never met up and become friends. I think everybody kind of has that like hindsight idea that like maybe if they had never met, this wouldn't have happened. There's no way to know. There's no way to tell. We can't go back and change it just to see what would have happened. But yeah, I had that thought process myself that like if maybe these two kids have just like never met, would we be in this situation? Would we be sitting here talking about the Columbine High School shooting if these two kids had never been friends? I can't answer that question. I don't know. I don't know who originally had the idea. I don't know who like made this happen. I don't know. I can't tell you that. In 1996, 15-year-old Eric Harris created a private website on America Online, AOL. It was initially to host levels, also known as WODs, Harris created for use in the first-person shooter video games Doom, Doom 2, and Quake. On the site, Harris began a blog which included details about Harris sneaking out of the house to cause mischief and vandalism, such as lighting fireworks with Klebold and others. These were known as rebel missions, and Harris's blog primarily consisted of mission logs. Beginning in early 1997, the blog postings began to show the first signs of Harris's anger against society. By the end of the year, the site contained instructions on how to make explosives. Harris's site attracted few visitors. Damn it. And caused no concern until August of 1997, after Harris ended a blog post detailing murderous fantasies with, quote, "All I want to do is kill and injure as many of you as I can, especially a few people, like Brooks Brown," end quote. Brown was a classmate of his. After Brown's parents viewed the site, they contacted the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office on August 7th, 1997. An investigator wrote a draft affidavit to request a search warrant for the Harris household, but it was never submitted to a judge. And there's like, for me, that was the first major fuck up that the Colorado Police Department had. The Littleton, Colorado Police Department had. If they had searched the house or searched his computers, they could have potentially found evidence that they were planning for years this school shooting. And because they didn't take it seriously enough, we ended up sitting here talking about this story today. Like, I don't have an issue with Colorado. I don't have an issue with Colorado's police, but like, if you think about it, this is how they botched the whole JonBenet Ramsey thing. Colorado has not had the greatest luck when it comes to murders, especially since JonBenet's murder is still unsolved. I mean, I guess at least in this case, they know who did it. Fuck. Yeah. On January 30th, 1998, Harris and Klebold were arrested for breaking into a white van parked near Littleton and stealing tools and computer equipment. They were subsequently attended joint court hearing where they pled guilty to the felony theft. The judge sentenced them to a juvenile diversion program. It did help. As a result, both delinquents attended mandatory classes such as anger management and talked with diversion officers. They both were eventually released from diversion several weeks early because of positive actions in the program and put on probation. Shortly after the court hearing for the van break-in, Harris reverted his website back to hosting user-created levels of Doom. He began to write his thoughts down in a journal. Klebold had already been keeping a personal journal since March 1997. As early as November of that year, Klebold had mentioned going on a killing spree. Klebold used his journal to vent about his personal problems as well as what he'd wear and use during the attack. In both their journals, Harris and Klebold would later plot the attack. Soon after beginning his journal, Harris typed out one plan of attack, which included possibly escaping to a foreign country after the massacre, or hijacking an aircraft at Denver International Airport and crashing it into New York City. Like, that's a big plan for a teenager. Like, where did you get that idea from? That's what I want to know. I would be more concerned about where they got the idea from than anything else. Like, would they have actually gone through with it? Probably not. But who knows? Because they did shoot up their whole school. So who knows? But I would want to know where they got that idea from. Harris also made entries in his journal on topics related to his sexuality, where he described his desire for sex with women, especially his desires of raping and torturing women in his bedroom. Harris also expressed interest in cannibalism, stating that he would like to dismember a woman with who he could have animalistic sex and eat her flesh. Harris and Klebold's schoolwork also foreshadowed the massacre. They both displayed themes of violence in their creative writing projects. In December 1997, Harris wrote a paper on school shootings titled Guns in School and a poem from the perspective of a bullet. Klebold wrote a short story about a man killing students, which worried his teacher so much that she alerted his parents. Both had also actively researched war and murder. For one project, Harris wrote a paper on Nazi Germany, and Klebold wrote a paper on Charles Manson. In a psychology class, Harris wrote he dreamed of going on a shooting spree with Klebold. Harris's journals describe several experimental bomb detonations. Nearly a year before the massacre, Klebold wrote a message in Harris's 1998 yearbook: killing enemies, blowing up stuff, killing cops. My wrath for January's incident will be godlike, not to mention our revenge in the Commons. The Commons was slang for the school cafeteria. Harris and Klebold were both enrolled in video production classes and kept 5 videotapes that were recorded with school video equipment. Only 2 of these, Hitmen for Hire and Rampart Range, and a part of a third, known as Radioactive Clothing, have been released. The remaining 3 tapes detailed their plans and reasons for the massacre, including the ways they hid their weapons and deceived their parents. Most were shot in the Harris family basement and are thus known as the basement tapes. 30 minutes before the attack, they made a final video saying goodbye and apologizing to their friends and families. In December 1999, before anyone besides investigators had seen them, Time magazine published an article on these tapes. The victims' family members threatened to sue Jefferson County. As a result, select victim families and journalists were allowed to view them, though the tapes were then withheld from the public and in 2011 destroyed for fear of inspiring future massacres. Transcripts of some of the dialogue and a short clip recorded recorded by a victim's father still exist, because I cannot say that word today. The pair claimed they were going to make copies of the tapes to send to news stations, but never did so. When an economics class had Harris make an ad for a business, he and Klebold made a video called Hitmen for Hire on December 8, 1998, which was released in February in 2004. It depicts them as part of the Trenchcoat Mafia, a clique in the school who wore black trench coats and opposed jocks, extorting money for protecting preps from bullies. Klebold and Harris themselves were apparently not a part of the Trenchcoat Mafia, but were friends with some of its members. They wore black trench coats on their day of the massacre, and the Hitmen for Hire video also seemed kind of a dress rehearsal, showing them walking the halls of the school and shooting bullies outside with fake guns. On October 21st, 2003, a video was released showing the pair doing target practice on March 6th, 1999, in nearby foothills known as Rampart Range, with the weapons they would use in the massacre. Before the massacre, Harris left a microcassette labeled Nixon on the kitchen table. On it, Harris said, quote, "It is less than 9 hours now," placing the recording at sometime around 2:30 a.m. He went on to say, quote, "People will die because of me," and, quote, "It will be a day that will be remembered forever," end quote. In the months prior to the attack, Harris and Klebold acquired 2 9mm firearms and 2 12-gauge shotguns. Harris had a High Point .995 carbine with 13 10-round magazines and a Savage Springfield 67H pump-action shotgun. Klebold used a 9mm Intratec Tech 9 semi-automatic handgun with one 52, 132, and 128-round magazine and a Stevens 311D double-barreled shotgun. Harris's shotgun was sawed off to around 26 inches, and Klebold shortened his shotgun's length to 23 inches, a felony under the National Firearms Act. On November 22nd, 1998, their friend Robin Anderson purchased a carbine rifle and the 2 shotguns for the pair at the Tanner Gun Show, as they were too young to legally purchase the guns themselves. After the attack, she told investigators that she believed the pair had wanted the weapons for target shooting and denied that she had prior knowledge of their plans. Anderson was not charged. Harris and Klebold both held part-time jobs at a local blackjack pizza. Through Philip Duran, a coworker, Klebold bought a Tech 9 handgun from Mark Maines for $500 at another gun show on January 23rd. Maines' girlfriend, and Duran are all in the Rampart Range video. After the massacre, Maines and Duran were both prosecuted. Each was charged with supplying a handgun to a minor and possession of a sawed-off shotgun. Maines and Duran were sentenced to a total of 6 years and 4.5 years in prison. In addition to the firearms, the complex and highly planned attack involved several improvised explosive devices. Harris and Klebold constructed a total of 99 bombs. 99. We stopped at 99 because 99 is a lucky number, I guess. Don't know why we didn't go with 100. Not that I'm encouraging that they should have had more bombs. I'm just saying. Seems like an odd number to stop at. It is an odd number. You know what I mean. These included pipe bombs, carbon dioxide cartridges filled with gunpowder called crickets, Molotov cocktails, and propane tanks converted to bombs. You have to be smart to put this together or think, oh, I can make a bomb out of a propane tank, or I can convert a propane tank into a bomb. You would have to be smart to do this, and that's what these were smart kids, and it's sad to see that they took a different route in life with their brains than just growing up to be smart kids and rule the world someday. Could have done so much more. For ignition, they used door matches, cannon fuses, and model rocket igniters, as well as timing devices built from mechanical alarm clocks for the propane bombs. I forgot to put my hair in a headband today. That was smart. During the massacre, they carried match strikers taped to their forearms for easy ignition of the pipe bombs and CO2 bombs. Also experimented with napalm and envisioned a kind of backpack and flamethrower. They both attempted to get another friend and coworker, Chris Morris, who was a part of the Trenchcoat Mafia, to keep the napalm at his house, but he refused. Harris also tried to recruit him to be a third shooter, but played it off as a joke when rebuked. So this kid did not want to participate. And then the other guy, Harris, he was just like, haha, just kidding. Harris's website contained instructions on making pipe bombs and Molotovs, and the extensive use of shrapnel. Harris's father once discovered one of his pipe bombs. Harris's journal logged the creation of 25 pipe bombs. Klebold scared his coworkers by once bringing a pipe bomb into work. They would give various nicknames to their pipe bombs. After the massacre, two pipe bombs had been left in Klebold's bedroom, one named Vengeance and another Atlanta, presumably after the Olympic Park bombing. They had in their possession 8 propane tanks, all converted into bombs. The weekend before the shooting, Harris and Klebold bought 2 propane tanks and other supplies from a hardware store. So they were going to make more. They bought 6 propane tanks on the morning of the attack. Harris was caught on a Texaco gas station security camera at 9:12 a.m. buying a blue Rhino propane tank. Both cafeteria bombs included a single 20-pound tank, attached pipe bombs, and supporting gasoline canisters alongside. Both car bombs were made from 2 20-pound propane tanks, pipe bombs, and various containers filled with gasoline were spread throughout the vehicles. 8 pipe bombs were placed in Klebold's car and 1 in Harris's. Just 1 for Harris. Harris and Klebold were both equipped with knives, but investigators do not believe they ever utilized them during the massacre. Harris had a boot knife on his belt and a Khyber Pass machete Bowie knife taped to the back of his ankle. Both had an R referencing Harris's alias, Reb, etched into the handle, and the machete had a swastika on the sheath. Klebold had a cobra knife mounted to his belt on the left side, as well as switchblades in his right pocket. According to the shooters' respective journals and videotapes, it is believed by investigators that the pair intended to detonate their propane bombs in the cafeteria at the busiest lunch hour, killing hundreds of students. After this, they would shoot and stab survivors, as well as lob bombs. Bombs set in their cars and then the parking lot would also eventually detonate, killing more students, as well as possibly any police officers, paramedics, firemen, or reporters who had come to the school. However, the bombs in the cafeteria and the cars failed to detonate. Several official sources claimed they planned to shoot the fleeing survivors from the parking lot, but when the bombs failed, they moved to the staircase on the hill at the west side. Other sources claimed the top of the staircase where the massacre began was their preferred spot to wait for the bombs to go off all along. A total of 188 rounds of ammunition were fired by the perpetrators during the massacre. Firing nearly twice as much as Klebold, Harris fired his carbine rifle a total of 96 times, 47 shots outside, 36 shots inside, and 13 shots in the library. Harris also discharged his shotgun 25 times, 21 times in the library and 4 times inside. Klebold fired the Tech-9 handgun 55 times, 3 shots outside, 31 shots inside, and 21 shots in the library. Klebold also fired 12 rounds from his double-barreled shotgun, twice outside, 4 times inside, and 6 times in the library. Law enforcement officers fired 141 rounds during exchanges of gunfire with the shooters. On Tuesday morning, April 20th, 1990, Harris and Klebold placed 2 duffel bags in the cafeteria. Each bag contained propane bombs set to detonate during the A lunch shift, which began at 11:15 a.m. No witnesses recalled seeing the duffel bags being added to the 400 or so backpacks that were already in the cafeteria. The security staff at CHS did not observe the bags being placed in the cafeteria. One custodian was replacing the school security videotape at around 11:14 a.m. Shortly after the massacre, police speculated the bombs were placed during this tape change. They also investigated whether the bombs were placed during the after-prom party held the prior weekend. Some internet sleuths claim the bomb placement can be seen on surveillance video at around 10:58 a.m. Harris and Klebold were seen in the tapes planting the bombs in casual school clothes separately. Jefferson County Sheriff's Deputy, Neil Gardner, was assigned to the high school as a full-time school resource officer. Gardner usually ate lunch with students in the cafeteria, but on April 20th, he was eating lunch in his patrol car at the northwest corner of the campus, watching students in the Smoker's Pit in Clemont Park, a meadow adjacent to the school. 2 backpacks filled with pipe bombs, aerosol canisters, and small propane bombs were also placed in a field about 3 miles south of Columbine and 2 miles south of the fire station. The bombs were intended as a diversion to draw firefighters and emergency personnel away from the school. Only the pipe bombs in one of the aerosol canisters detonated, causing a small fire which was quickly extinguished by the fire department and went off after first having been moved. Bomb technicians immediately examined the bombs and relayed to police at the school the possibility of devices with motion activators. Harris and Klebold changed clothes and returned separately to CHS. Harris parked his vehicle in the junior student parking lot, and Klebold parked in the adjoining senior student parking lot. The school cafeteria was their primary bomb target. The cafeteria had a long outside window wall with ground level doors and was just north of the senior parking lot. The library was located above the cafeteria in the second story of the window wall. Each car contained bombs. As Harris pulled into the parking lot, he encountered classmate Brooks Brown. He was surprised. According to Brown, who was smoking a cigarette, he was surprised to see Harris, whom he earlier noted had been absent from a class test. Harris, a good student, was unlikely to miss school days with important academic obligation. Brown berated Harris for missing the test. Harris, acting unconcerned, replied, "It doesn't matter anymore," Harris went on. "Brooks, I like you now. Get out of here. Go home." Brown, feeling uneasy and already prepared to skip his next class, walked away down South Pierce Street. Meanwhile, Harris and Klebold armed themselves using straps and webbing to conceal weapons beneath their trench coats. They lugged bags containing bombs and ammunition. Harris had concealed his shotgun in one of the bags beneath the trench coats. Harris wore a military band roller and a white t-shirt with the inscription "Natural Selection" of black letters, a mantra he had adopted. Klebold wore a black t-shirt with "Wrath" in red letters. The cafeteria bombs failed to detonate. Had these explosives detonated as intended, they would have killed or severely wounded the 488 students of the cafeteria and damaged the school's infrastructure, collapsing the library into the cafeteria and possibly killing more students and staff. At 11:19 a.m., 17-year-old Rachel Scott and her friend Richard Castaldo were having lunch and sitting on the grass next to the west entrance of the school. Klebold threw a pipe bomb towards the parking lot. The bomb only partially detonated, causing it to give off smoke. Castaldo thought it was no more than a crude senior prank. Likewise, several students during the incident first thought that they were watching a prank. A witness reported hearing "go, go, go" before Klebold and Harris pulled their guns from beneath their trench coats and began shooting. Scott was killed instantly when she was hit 4 times with rounds fired from Harris's carbine. 1 shot was to the left temple. Castaldo was shot 8 times in the chest, arm, and abdomen by both Harris and Klebold. He fell unconscious to the ground and was left paralyzed below the chest. After firing twice, Klebold's Tech-9 jammed, and he was forced to temporarily cease shooting to fix it, which he did by reloading a new magazine into his pistol. Meanwhile, Harris took off his trench coat and aimed his carbine down the west staircase in the direction of 3 students: Daniel Rohrer, Sean Graves, and Lance Kirkland. The students presumed they were paintball guns and were about to walk up the staircase directly below the shooters. Harris fired 10 times, killing Rohrer and injuring Graves and Kirkland. William David Sanders, a teacher and coach at the school, was in the cafeteria when he heard the gunfire and began warning students. Harris turned west and fired 7 shots in the direction of 5 students sitting on the grassy hillside adjacent to the steps and opposite the west entrance of the school. Michael Johnson was hit in the face, leg, and arm, but ran and escaped. Mark Taylor was shot in the chest, arms, and leg and fell to the ground where he faked death. The other 3 escaped uninjured. Klebold walked down the steps toward the cafeteria. He first shot once at the body of Dan Rohrer with a shotgun, and then came up to Lance Kirkland, who was already wounded and lying on the ground, weakly calling for help. Klebold said, quote, "Sure, I'll help you," end quote, then shot Kirkland in the jaw with a shotgun. Although near fatally injured, Kirkland would survive. Graves, paralyzed beneath the waist, had crawled into the doorway of the cafeteria's west entrance and collapsed. He rubbed his own blood on his face and played dead. After shooting Kirkland, Klebold walked towards the cafeteria door. He then stepped over the injured Graves to enter the cafeteria. Graves remembers Klebold saying something like, "Sorry, dude." Klebold only briefly entered the cafeteria and did not shoot at the several people still inside. Officials speculated that Klebold went to check on the propane bombs. Harris was still on top of the stairs shooting, and severely wounded and partially paralyzed 17-year-old Anne-Marie Hochhalter as she tried to flee. Klebold came out of the cafeteria and went back up the stairs to join Harris. They each shot once at students standing close to a soccer field but did not hit anyone. They walked toward the west entrance, throwing pipe bombs in several directions, including onto the roof. Only a few of those pipe bombs detonated. Witnesses heard one of them say, "This is what we always wanted to do. This is awesome." Meanwhile, art teacher Patty Nielsen was inside the school. She had noticed the commotion and walked toward the west entrance with student Brian Anderson. Nielsen had intended to walk outside to tell the two students, "Knock it off," thinking they were either filming a video or pulling a student prank. As Anderson opened the first set of double doors, the gunman shot out the windows, injuring him with flying glass. Nielsen was hit in the shoulder with shrapnel. Anderson and Nielsen ran back down the hall. Ran back down the hall into the library, and Nielsen alerted the students inside to danger, telling them to get under desks and keep silent. She dialed 911 and hid under the library's administrative counter. Anderson fell to the floor, bleeding from his injuries, then hid inside the magazine room adjacent to the library. 11:22 a.m., a custodian called Deputy Neil Gardner, the assigned resource officer to Columbine, on the school radio requesting assistance in the senior parking lot. The only paved route took him toward the school to the east and south on Pierce Street, where at 11:23 a.m. he heard on his police radio that a female was down and assumed she had been struck by a car. While exiting his patrol car on the senior lot at 11:24, he heard another call on the school radio. "Neil, there's a shooter in the school." Harris at the west entrance immediately turned and fired 10 shots from his carbine at Gardner, who was 60 yards away. As Harris reloaded his carbine, Gardner leaned over the top of his car and fired 4 rounds at Harris from his service pistol. Harris ducked back behind the building, and Gardner momentarily believed that he had hit him. Harris then reemerged and fired at least 4 more rounds at Gardner, which missed and struck 2 parked cars before retreating into the building. No one was hit during the exchange of gunfire. Gardner reported on his police radio, "Shots in the building. I need someone in the south lot with me." By this point, Harris had shot 47 times, and Klebold 5. The shooters then entered the school through the west entrance, moving along the main north hallway, throwing pipe bombs and shooting at anyone they encountered. Klebold shot Stephanie Munson in the ankle, but she was able to walk out of the school. The pair then shot out the windows to the east entrance of the school. After proceeding through the hall several times and shooting toward and missing any students they saw, they went toward the west entrance and turned into the library hallway. I hate when this happens. Deputies Paul Smoker and Paul McGore, motorcycle patrolmen for the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, were writing a traffic ticket north of the school when the female down call came in at 11:23 a.m. Taking the shortest route, they drove their motorcycles over grass between the athletic fields and headed toward the west entrance. When they saw Deputy Scott Tabarsky, Rick Searle, and Kevin Walker following them in their patrol car, they abandoned their motorcycles for the safety of the car. The 6 deputies had begun to rescue 2 wounded students near the ball fields when another gunfight broke out at 11:26 a.m. As Harris returned to the double doors and again began shooting at Deputy Gardner, who returned fire. From the hilltop, Deputy Smoker fired 3 rounds from his pistol at Harris, who again retreated into the building. As before, no one was hit. Inside the school cafeteria, Dave Sanders and two custodians, John Curtis and Jay Galentine, initially told students to get under the tables, then successfully evacuated students up the staircase leading to the second floor of the school. The stairs were located around the corner from the library hallway and the main south hallway. Sanders then tried to secure as much of the school as he could. Sanders and another student were down at the end of the hallway, where he gestured for students in the library to stay, before encountering Harris and Klebold, who were approaching from the corner of the north hallway. Sanders and the student turned and ran in the opposite direction. Harris and Klebold shot at them both, with Harris hitting Sanders twice in the back and neck, hitting his teeth on exit, but missing the student. The latter ran into a science classroom and warned everyone to hide. Klebold walked over towards Sanders, who had collapsed, and tossed a pipe bomb, then returned to Harris up the library hallway. Sanders struggled toward the science area, and a teacher took him into a classroom where 30 students were located. Due to his knowledge of first aid, student Aaron Hansey was brought to the classroom from another by teachers despite the unfolding commotion. With the assistance of fellow student Kevin Starkey and teacher Teresa Miller, Hansey administered first aid to Sanders for 3 hours, attempting to stem the blood loss using shirts from students in the room and showing him pictures from his wallet to keep him talking. Using a phone in the room, Miller and several students maintained contact with police outside the school. As the shooting unfolded, pipe bombs were tossed in the hallways and down into the cafeteria. Patty Nielsen in the library called 911, telling her story and urging students in the library to take cover beneath desks. According to transcripts, her call was received by a 911 operator at 11:25 a.m. So real quick, I'm just going to give you the fatalities. Who all died? We're not done with, obviously, the actual discussion of what happened, but there is a small list here of fatalities that I do want to get out there just so that we understand who actually died as I proceed. Rachel Scott, 17, was killed on the grass outside the west entrance by Harris. Daniel Rohrberg, 15, killed at bottom of stairs leading to west entrance by Harris. William David Sanders, 47, shot in hallway adjacent library by Harris, died of blood loss in the science classroom. Kyle Velasquez, 16, was killed while sitting in a chair near the middle of the north computer table in the library by Klebold. Stephen Kernrow, 14, killed at the west end of the south computer table in the library by Harris. Cassie Burnell, 17, killed under library table number 19 by Harris. Isaiah Scholes, 18, killed under library table number 16 by Harris. Matthew Ketcher, 16, killed under the library table number 16 by Klebold. Lauren Townsend, 18, killed under library table number 2 by Klebold. John Tomlin, 16, killed next to library table number 6 by Klebold after being wounded by Harris. Kelly Fleming, 16, killed next to the library table number 2 by Harris. Daniel Mauser, 15, killed under library table number 9 by Harris. Corey DePuter, 17, killed under library table number 14 by Klebold. Eric Harris, 18, committed suicide via self-inflicted gunshot wound. And Dylan Klebold, 17, committed suicide via self-inflicted gunshot wound. As you can see, most of the fatalities occurred in the library. And it is unfortunate because I feel like if they had not told the students to stay in the library and they had taken the exits that were in the library, from what I understand, there was a door leading out of the library. If they had taken that exit, they could have gotten out. But they were told to stay, they were told to remain where they were, and that's what they did. And unfortunately, that cost at least 9 people their lives. And it's unfortunate. It's very sad. Actually, it cost 10 people their lives. 12 people their lives. Because, 12. Cost 12 people their lives. And I'm sure that's not an easy thing to live with, knowing that you told them to stay instead of getting out. I've never been to this school myself. I don't know if there was actually an exit leading out of the library, but from what I understood, there was a way out from where they were, and instead they were told to remain where they were at, that they were safe where they were, and unfortunately they were not. I don't know why it never occurred to anyone to do something to maybe barricade the doors so they couldn't get in, put something in the doors, whether it be chair legs or, break a shelf off of one of the, I don't know why that never was done or it didn't occur to anyone. I mean, I guess when you're in that situation in panic, you're not going to know what to do. But yeah, it was unfortunate because that is where 99% of the loss of life was in the library. At 11:29 a.m., Harris and Klebold entered the library. 52 students, two teachers, and two librarians were inside. Harris yelled at everyone to get up, loud enough to be heard on the 911 call. When no one complied, Harris yelled, "Fine, I'll start shooting anyway." Harris fired a shotgun twice at a desk. Student Evan Todd had been standing near a pillar when the shooters entered the library and had just taken cover behind a photocopier. Todd was hit by wood splinters in the eye and lower back, but was not seriously injured. He then hid behind the administrative counter. The gunman walked into the library towards the two rows of computers. Sitting at the north row was disabled student Kyle Velasquez. Klebold fired a shotgun, fatally hitting him in the head and back. They both put down their ammunition-filled duffel bags at the south, or lower, row of computers and reloaded their weapons. They then walked behind the computer rows towards the windows facing the outside staircase. Throughout the massacre in the library, they ordered everybody to get up, said how long they had been waiting for this, and seemed to be enjoying themselves, shooting things like, "Woo!" after shouting. While ordering the jocks to stand up, one of the two said anybody with a white hat or a sports emblem on it is dead. Wearing a white baseball cap at Columbine was a tradition among sports team members. Nobody stood up, and several students tried to hide their white hats. Windows were shot out in the garden in the direction of the recently arrived police. Officers returned fire, and the gunman retreated from the windows. No one was injured. Klebold removed his trench coat. He then fired a shotgun at a nearby table, injuring 3 students: Patrick Ireland, Daniel Steepleton, and Mackay Hall. Harris walked toward the lower row of computer desks with his shotgun and fired a single shot under the first desk while down on one knee. He hit 14-year-old Stephen Kernow with a mortal wound to the neck. He then moved to the adjacent computer desk, injuring 17-year-old Casey Rugseger with a shot which passed completely through her right shoulder, also grazing her neck and severing a major artery. When she started gasping in pain, Harris said, quote, "Quit your bitching." Harris then walked to a table south of the lower computer table with 2 students underneath, Cassie Burnell and Emily Wyant. Harris slapped the surface of the table twice as he knelt and said "peekaboo" before shooting Burnell once in the head with a shotgun, killing her. Harris at this point held the gun with one hand, and the weapon hit his face in recoil, injuring his nose. He told Klebold he had done so, and Klebold responded, "Why'd you do that?" After fatally shooting Bernal, Harris turned toward the next table where Bree Pascal sat next to the table rather than under it. Harris's nose was bleeding. Witnesses later reported that he had blood around his mouth. Harris asked Pascal if she wanted to die, and she responded with a plea for her life. Harris laughed and responded, "Everyone's gonna die." When Klebold said "shoot her," Harris responded, "No, we're gonna blow up the school anyway." Klebold noticed Ireland trying to provide aid to Hall, who had suffered a wound to his knee. As Ireland tried to help Hall, his head rose above the table. Klebold shot him a second time, hitting him twice in the head and once in the foot. Ireland was knocked unconscious, but survived. Klebold then walked towards another table where he discovered 18-year-old Isaiah Scholes, 16-year-old Matthew Ketcher, and 16-year-old Craig Scott, Rachel's younger brother, hiding underneath. Klebold called out to Harris that he found a blank and tried to pull Scholes out from under the table. Harris left Pascal and joined him. According to witnesses, they taunted Scholes for a few seconds, making derogatory racial comments. The gunmen both fired under the table. Harris shot Scholes once in the chest, killing him, and Klebold shot and killed Ketcher. Though Scholes was not shot in the head, Klebold said, "I didn't know blank brains could fly that far." Meanwhile, Scott, who was uninjured, lying in the blood of his friends, feigning death. Harris then yelled, "Who's ready to die next?" He turned and threw a cricket at the table where Hall, Steepleton, and Ireland were located. It landed on Steepleton's thigh. Hall quickly noticed it and tossed it behind them and exploded in midair. Harris walked toward the bookcases between the west and center section of tables in the library. He jumped on one and shook it, apparently attempting to topple it, then shot at the books which had fallen. Klebold walked to the east area of the library. Harris walked from the bookcase past the central area to meet Klebold. The latter shot at a display case next to the door, then turned and shot towards the closest table, hitting and injuring 17-year-old Mark Kittingen in the head and shoulder. He then turned toward the table to his left and fired, injuring 18-year-old Lisa Cruet, Lauren Townsend, and Valine Schnurr with the same shotgun blast. Klebold then moved toward the same table and fired several shots with the Tech-9, killing Townsend. At this point, the seriously injured Valine Schnurr began screaming, "Oh my God, oh my God." In response, Klebold asked Schnurr if she believed in the existence of God. When Schnurr replied she did, Klebold asked why and commented, "God is gay." Klebold reloaded but walked away from the table. Harris approached another table where two girls were hiding. He bent down to look at them and dismissed them as pathetic. Harris then moved to another table where he fired twice, injuring 16-year-olds Nicole Nolan and John Tomlin. Tomlin moved out from under the table, and Klebold shot him repeatedly, killing him. Harris then walked back over to the other side of the table where Townsend lay dead. Behind the table, a 16-year-old girl named Kelly Fleming had, like Brie Pascal, sat next to the table rather than beneath it due to a lack of space. Harris shot Fleming with his shotgun, hitting her in the back and killing her. He shot at the table behind Fleming, hitting Townsend, who was already dead, Courettes again, and wounding 18-year-old Gianna Park. The shooters moved to the center of the library where they reloaded their weapons at a table. Harris then pointed his carbine under a table, but the student he was aiming at moved out of the way. Harris turned his gun back on the student and told him to identify himself. It was John Savage, an acquaintance of Klebold's. He asked Klebold what they were doing, to which he shrugged and answered, "Oh, just killing people." Savage asked if they were going to kill him. However, because of the background noise, Klebold said, "What?" Savage asked again whether they were going to kill him. Klebold said no and told him to run. Savage fled, escaping through the library's main entrance and through the cafeteria. After Savage left, Harris turned and fired his carbine at the table directly north of where he had been, hitting the ear and hand of 15-year-old Daniel Miser. Miser retaliated by either shoving a chair at Harris or grabbing at his leg. Harris fired again and hit Mauser in the center of the face at close range, killing him. Harris then moved south and fired 3 shots under another table, critically injuring two 17-year-olds, Jennifer Doyle and Austin Eubanks. Klebold then shot once, fatally wounding 17-year-old Carrie DePuter at 11:35. There were no further victims. They had killed 10 people in the library and wounded 12. Klebold was quoted as saying, "They might start knifing people, though they never did." They headed towards the library's main counter. Harris threw a Molotov cocktail toward the southwestern end of the library, but it failed to explode. They converged close to where Todd had moved after having been wounded. Klebold pulled the chair out from under the desk, then pointed his Tech 9 at Todd, who was wearing a white hat. Klebold asked if he was a jock, and when Todd said no, Klebold responded, "Well, that's good. We don't like jocks." Klebold then demanded to see his face. Todd partly looked at his hat so his face would remain obscured. When Klebold asked Todd to give him one reason why he should not kill him, Todd said, "I don't want trouble." Klebold responded back angrily, "Trouble? You don't even know what trouble is." Todd tried to correct himself. "That's not what I meant. I mean, I don't have a problem with you guys. I never will, and I never did." Klebold then told Harris he was going to let Todd live, but that Harris could kill him if he wanted. Harris appeared to pay no attention and stated that he and Klebold should head to the cafeteria. Klebold fired into an open library staff break room, hitting a small television. While Harris was walking away, Klebold said one more thing, then picked up the chair beside the library counter under which Patty Nielsen was hiding, and slammed the chair down on top of the computer terminal and library counter. Klebold joined Harris at the library entrance. The two walked out of the library at 11:36. Cautiously, fearing the shooter's return, 10 injured and 29 uninjured survivors began to evacuate the library through the north emergency exit door, which led to the sidewalk adjacent to the west entrance. Casey Rugseger was evacuated from the library by Craig Scott. Had she not been evacuated at this point, Rugseger would likely have bled to death from her injuries. Patrick Island, unconscious, and Lisa Cruets, unable to move, remained in the building. Patty Nielsen crawled into the exterior break room, into which Klebold had fired earlier shots, and hid in a cupboard. After leaving the library, Harris and Klebold entered the science area, where they caused a fire in an empty storage closet. It was extinguished by a teacher who had hidden in an adjacent room. The gunman then proceeded toward the south hallway, where they shot into an empty science room. At 11:44 a.m., they were captured on the school's security cameras as they re-entered the cafeteria. The recording shows Harris crouching against the rail on the staircase and firing toward the propane bombs left in the cafeteria in an unsuccessful attempt to detonate them. As Klebold approached the propane bomb and examined it, Harris took a drink from one of the cups left behind. Klebold lit a Molotov cocktail and threw it at the propane bomb. About a minute later, the gallon of fuel attached to the bomb ignited, causing a fire that was extinguished by the fire sprinklers a few minutes later. They left the cafeteria at 11:46. After leaving the cafeteria, they returned to the main north and south hallways of the school and fired several shots. into the walls and ceilings of students and teachers' hidden rooms. They walked through the south hallway into the main office before returning to the north hallway. At 11:56, they returned to the cafeteria and briefly entered the school kitchen. They returned up the staircase and into the south hallway at 12 p.m. They re-entered the library, which was empty of survivors except for the unconscious Ireland and the injured Cruets. Once inside at 12:02 p.m., police were shot at again through the library windows and returned fire. Nobody was injured in the exchange. By 12:05, all gunfire from the school had ceased. By 12:08 p.m., both gunmen had killed themselves. Harris sat down with his back to a bookshelf and fired a shotgun through the roof of his mouth. Klebold went down on his knees and shot himself in the left temple with his Tech 9. An article by the Rocky Mountain News stated that Patty Nielsen overheard them shout 1, 2, 3 in unison just before a loud boom. Nielsen later said that she had never spoken with either of the writers of this article. In 2002, the National Enquirer published 2 post-mortem photos of Harris and Klebold in the library. Klebold's gun was underneath his body and so unseen in the photo, leading to speculation that Harris shot Klebold before killing himself. However, some of Klebold's blood was on Harris's legs. Also, just before shooting himself, Klebold lit a Molotov cocktail on a nearby table, underneath which Patrick Island was laying, which caused the tabletop to momentarily catch fire. Underneath the scorched film of material was a piece of Harris's brain matter, suggesting Harris had shot himself by this point. By 12 p.m., SWAT teams were stationed outside the school and ambulances started taking the wounded to local hospitals. A call for additional ammunition for police officers in case of a shootout came at 12:20. Authorities reported pipe bombs by 1, and 2 SWAT teams entered the school at 1:09, moving from classroom to classroom, discovering hidden students and faculty. They entered at the end of the school opposite the library, hampered by old maps and unaware a new wing had recently been added. They were also hampered by the sound of the fire alarms. Meanwhile, families of students and staff were asked to gather at nearby Leawood Elementary School to await information. All students, teachers, and school employees were taken away, questioned, and offered medical care in small holding areas before being bused to meet with their family members at Leawood Elementary. Some of the victims' families were told to wait on one final school bus that never came. Patrick Island had regained and lost consciousness several times after being shot by Klebold. Paralyzed on his right side, he crawled to the library windows, where on live television at 2:38 p.m., he stretched out the window, intending to fall into the arms of 2 SWAT team members standing on the roof of an emergency vehicle, but instead falling directly onto the vehicle's roof in a pool of blood. He became known as the boy in the window. The team members Don Kramer and John Remenek were later criticized for allowing Ireland to drop more than 7 feet to the ground while doing nothing to try to ensure he could be lowered to the ground safely or break his fall. At 2:15 p.m., students placed a sign in the window, "One bleeding to death," in order to alert police and medical personnel of Dave Sanders' location in the science room. Police initially feared it was a ruse by the shooters. A shirt was also tied to the doorknob. At 2:30, this was spotted, and by 2:40, SWAT officers evacuated the room of students and called for a paramedic. Hansi and Starkey were reluctant to leave Sanders behind. By 3 o'clock, the SWAT team officers had moved Sanders to a storage room, which was more easily accessible. As they did so, a paramedic arrived and found Sanders had no pulse. He had died of his injuries in the storage room before he could receive medical care. He was the only teacher to die in the shooting. Lisa Cruets, shot in the shoulder, arms, hands, and thigh, remained laying in the library. She had tried to move but became lightheaded. Cruets kept track of time by the sound of the school's bells until police arrived. Cruets was finally evacuated at 3:22 p.m. along with Patty Nielsen, Brian Anderson, and the 3 library staff who had hidden in the rooms adjacent to the library. Officials found the bodies in the library by 3:30. By 4 o'clock, Sheriff John P. Stone made an initial estimate of 25 dead students and teachers, 50 wounded, and referred to the massacre as a suicide mission. President Bill Clinton later issued a statement. Stone said the police officers were searching the bodies of the gunmen. They feared they had used their pipe bombs to booby-trap corpses, including their own. At 4:30 p.m., the school was declared safe. At 5:30, additional officers were called in as more explosives were found in the parking lot and on the roof. By 6:15, officials had found a bomb in Klebold's car in the parking lot, set to detonate the gas tank. Stone then marked the entire school as a crime scene. At 10:40 p.m., a member of the bomb squad who was attempting to dispose of an undetonated pipe bomb accidentally lit a striking match attached to the bomb by brushing it against the wall of the ordnance disposal trailer. The bomb detonated inside the trailer, but no one was injured. The bomb squad disarmed the car bomb. Klebold's car was repaired and in 2006 put up for auction. On the morning of April 21st, bomb squads combed the high school. By 8:30 a.m., the official death toll of 15 was released. The early estimate was 10 over, with the true death actual count, but close to the total count of wounded students. The total count of deaths was 12 students, 14 including the shooters, and one teacher. 20 students and one teacher were injured as a result of the shootings. 3 more victims were injured indirectly as they tried to escape the school. At 10 a.m., the bomb squad declared the building safe for officials to enter. By 11:30 a.m., a spokesman of the sheriff declared the investigation underway. 13 of the bodies were still inside the high school as investigators photographed the building. At 2:30 p.m., a press conference was held by Jefferson County District Attorney David Thomas and Sheriff John Stone, at which they said that they had suspected others had helped plan the shooting. Formal identification of the dead had not yet taken place, but families of the children thought to have been killed had been notified. Throughout the late afternoon and early evening, the bodies were gradually removed from the school and taken to the Jefferson County Coroner's Office to be identified and autopsied. By 5 p.m., the names of many of the dead were known. An official statement was released naming the 15 confirmed deaths and 27 injuries related to the massacre. On April 22nd, the cafeteria bombs were discovered. In the days following the shootings, Rachel Scott's car and John Tomlin's truck became memorials, and impromptu memorials were held in Clement Park. On April 30th, carpenter Greg Zanis erected 15 6-foot-tall wooden crosses to honor those who had died at the school. Daniel Roberg's father cut down the 2 meant for the gunman. There were also 15 trees planted, and he cut down 2 of those as well. I don't blame him. He took his son's life. You can't ever get that back. I can't blame the parents or the families or even the friends for being angry. If you wanted to have some kind of memorial, I guess that included the shooters, that should have been up to the shooters' parents, and it should have been put somewhere that was not going to interfere with the 13 innocent people that died. And the reality is these were innocent people. So I can't even sit here and say that the dad was wrong to do what he did, because I don't think he was. I think in his heart, these people did not deserve to be memorialized because they murdered 13 innocent people, including his own son. So I don't think what he did was wrong, because I personally would not want my kids' killers to be memorialized next to them. 13 innocent people died at the hands of 2 students for no reason other than that they wanted to do it. That was it. And I know we'll get into this discussion and somebody's going to say in the comments, oh, they were bullied. Well, you know what? I was bullied pretty much the entire time I was in school. And I never had any desire to, off my fellow students. So I don't think it really has anything to do with that. And I mean, when I say I was bullied. It was bad. But I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think these kids thought it would be like a real life video game and ended up killing 13 people. So I will not sit here and say that I think Daniel's father did the wrong thing by cutting down those crosses or trees. Fully support it. He did not want his son's killers to be memorialized with his son, and I respect that. In November 2021, a report was leaked to NPR about that year's National Rifle Association convention in Denver. In a series of audio tapes, Wayne LaPierre and other top officials suggested raising $1 million for the victims' families, and the cancellation of the convention was considered by some within the organization. Also on April 30th, high-ranking officials of Jefferson County and the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office met to decide if they should reveal that Michael Guerrera had drafted an affidavit for a search warrant of Harris's residence more than a year before the shootings, based on his previous investigation of Harris's website and activities. Since the affidavit's contents lacked the necessary probable cause, they decided not to disclose this information at a press conference held on April 30th, nor did they mention it in any other way. And over the next 2 years, Guerrera's original draft and investigative file documents were lost. In September of 1999, Jefferson County investigator failed to find the documents during a secret search of the county's computer system. A second attempt in late 2000 found copies of the document within the Jefferson County archives. Their loss was termed troubling by a grand jury convened after the file's existence was reported in April of 2001. It was concealed by the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office and not revealed until September 2001, resulting from an investigation by the TV show 60 Minutes. The documents were reconstructed and released to the public, but the original documents are still missing. The final grand jury investigation was released in September of 2004. In the wake of the shootings, victims Rachel Scott and Cassie Burnell came to be regarded as Christian martyrs by evangelical Christians. Christian churches used the martyr narrative of Scott's and Burnell's deaths to promote themselves and recruit members. The closest living witness to Scott's death, Richard Costado, has stated Harris asked Scott if she believed in God and murdered her after she answered, "You know I do." But this has been questioned, and Costado later stated that he was not sure. Considerable media attention focused upon Bernal, who had been killed by Harris in the library and who Harris was reported to have asked, "Do you believe in God?" immediately prior to her murder. Bernal was reported to have responded yes to this question before her murder. Emily Wynette, the closest living witness to Bernal's death, denied that Bernal and Harris had such an exchange. Joshua Lapp thought Bernal had been queried about her belief, but he was unable to correctly point out where Bernal was located and was closer to survivor Valine Schnurr during the shootings. And as we know from my previous statements, it was Schnurr that he asked that question to, not Cassie. Likewise, another witness, Craig Scott, claimed the discussion was with Burnell. However, when asked to indicate where the conversation had been coming from, he pointed to where Valine was shot. Valine herself claims she was the one questioned as to her belief in God. Classes at Columbine were held at nearby Chatfield Senior High for the remaining 3 weeks of the 1999 school year. In August 1999, students returned to the school, and Principal Frank DeAngelis led a rally of students clad in "We Are Columbine" shirts. 6 months after the shootings, Anne Maureen Hallculture's mother killed herself. Several former students and teachers had PTSD. Craig Barnes, a 17-year-old student who had witnessed Sanders' shooting, committed suicide in May of 2000. Survivor Austin Banks, who was injured during the shooting, became heavily medicated, developing an opioid addiction. Eventually overcoming and later speaking publicly about the addiction, Eubanks died from an accidental overdose in 2019 at the age of 37. And the immediate aftermath, conspiracy theories and unfounded claims were made by several anti-government movements and extremist religious and political movements such as the Westboro Baptist Church and the televangelist Jerry Fallow Sr. Westboro's founder and then leader Fred Phelps unfoundedly claimed that both Harris and Klebold were gay, saying two filthy fags slaughtered 13 people at Columbine High. Falwell also claimed that Harris and Klebold were gay, though he retracted afterward. Conspiracy theories also arose from anti-gun control activists and extremists claiming that the massacre had either been staged or that both Harris and Klebold had been government agents aiming at promoting tougher gun control legislation. Other conspiracy theorists point to a mysterious third shooter that has never been identified. Other anti-Semitic conspiracy theories pointed to the massacre being a Jewish conspiracy due to Klebold's mother being Jewish. Political commentator and conspiracy theorist Alex Jones once implied that the U.S. government had perpetrated Columbine and has claimed that the Columbine school shootings were 100% false. The shootings were planned as a terrorist attack that would cause the most deaths in U.S. history, but the motive has never been ascertained with any degree of certainty. In a letter provided with the May 15th report on the Columbine attack, Sheriff John Stone and Undersheriff John A. Dunaway wrote that they cannot answer the most fundamental question, why. In the days following the event, media speculation regarding the killer's motive was rife. These reports included blaming bullying, goth culture, video games, Marilyn Manson, and targeting jocks and minorities. Other rumors were spread in the local area, but not largely disseminated by the media, such as the false claim spread by some students that the killers were bullied because they were homosexual. The FBI concluded that the killers had mental illnesses, that Harris was a clinical psychopath, and Klebold had depression. I believe Eric went to the school to kill and didn't care if he died. Well, Dylan wanted to die and didn't care if others died as well. In April 1998, a year prior to the shooting, a part of his diversion program, Harris wrote a letter of apology to the owner of the van he and Klebold broke into that year. Klebold had repeatedly documented his desires to kill himself, and his final remark in the basement tapes shortly before the attack is a resigned statement made as he glances away from the camera. "Just know I'm going to a better place. I don't like life too much." This theory has been met with criticism. Critics cite the fact that Klebold, not Harris, was the first to mention a killing spree in his journal. They also cite evidence that Harris was depressed as well, such as prescription for antidepressants mentioned below. There have been other attempts to diagnose Harris and Klebold with mental illness. Peter Langman believes Harris was a psychopath and Klebold was schizotypal. Professor Aubrey Emmelman published a personality profile of Harris based on journal entries and personal communication and believes the material suggested behavior patterns consistent with a malignant narcissism, pathological narcissistic personality disorder with borderline and antisocial features, along with some paranoid traits and unconstrained aggression. So that is the big story of Columbine High School. I did think about getting into like all the things that that they were blaming for this, but in reality, let's be honest, it is not Marilyn Manson's fault. It's not Jock's fault. It's not anybody's fault except for the people who did not realize that these kids were being bullied and did nothing to stop it. It does have something to do with the parents in a way because they also did not notice that their children were having issues and needed help. So there are people to blame, but I don't think it's mainstream media. A lot of people I know, my kid plays video games. I don't expect her to go to the school and shoot it up. That's it's just dumb. It's dumb to blame things that everybody participates in and say, oh, well, this had this negative effect on these two students, but has no effect on the other 300 and some odd kids playing this game or more. So I don't think we can sit here and adequately say, without a doubt, the video games are the reason that Columbine happened. Because it's not. There's so much more to it than we know. And because the two students who did it are dead, we'll never know what their point was, what their theory was, what they thought they were going to accomplish. And while it is sad, and it definitely advocates for some more, I think it should advocate to the schools that they need to be more proactive with zero tolerance policies. And instead of saying that you're a zero tolerance school, actually being a zero tolerance school and making sure that the students that are being bullied have a safe place to go and have something that they can say to a teacher and say, oh no, blah, blah, blah is bullying me and this is how it makes me feel. And I would really like some backup and support so we could figure out what to do to make this student leave me alone. I fully put the blame where the blame needs to be, and that is on Dylan and Eric. Those are the only two people we can blame for the Columbine shooting. They were the ones who woke up that morning and said, let's take a bunch of bombs, knives, and guns to school today and shoot our classmates. So the only two people I truly believe you can blame in the Columbine situation is Dylan Harris, Eric Harris, and Dylan Klebold. Sorry, I got the names mixed up. Those are the only two people you can blame. As always, please don't do anything I wouldn't do. Be cautiously kind to others. And if you're in school, be really nice to others. And make good choices. And I'll see you all next Monday for another 90s. Remember, for the 90s, the 2000s, and I think the 2010s, I have 2 segments set up to go. So this was an hour and 7 minutes. That's pretty impressive. All right, as always, please be careful. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye.